Oh, Joe, there you are. Hey, man, were you part of the security detail that was supposed to be interrogating these alien intruders?
Oh yeah, I did. I just got done talking to him actually. Great bunch of guys.
What?
Yeah, really friendly. Just a delight to talk to. Got to know
Okay,
one
so you
of them.
didn't
His
have to
name.
waterboard any of them to get the information out then.
Oh, heavens no, no. They were happy to discuss their circumstances and do everything they could to help us out in this kind of weird circumstance we find ourselves in.
Kind of weird Dude, this is an invasion. Where are our dudes at? Why are they here?
What do you mean? Hey, listen, they're as confused as we are, and you know what? They're so friendly and helpful that they volunteered to actually familiarize themselves on ship systems. They could help us with the search while we're a little short-handed.
Yeah, my ass. Hey, what'd the lie detector say?
What do you mean lie detector?
Oh, I mean, you hooked him up to the lie detector, right?
Oh, we just had a conversation.
Joe, these guys are abducting our people and very clearly trying to take the ship over.
No, they're not. They're just strangers, friendly alien strangers that just are kind of appearing on the ship while our people are disappearing. I'm sure it's some sort of random space butthole that is responsible. We'll fix it.
Hicks down on deck 3 told me that he saw 4 of them standing around with a homemade map of Voyager that they had tattooed on one of the guy's back with a big X over the weapons locker, engineering, in the bridge.
Well, they are busy mapping out different locations that people have appeared and disappeared as part of their assistance for us. And, I don't understand their culture real well, so maybe that's just how they, record information. We have to be sensitive to other people's cultures in the Delta Quadrant. It's a weird place.
Joe, now's the wrong time to be woke, Starfleet. We are in the middle of a major invasion, dude. The chief engineer is gone.
And just so happened that there's this really friendly alien engineer that's shown up and is down in engineering right now, helping us figure things out and learning all the controls. Absolutely nothing could go wrong.
I saw a group of those guys looking at Ensign Wildman, pointing at her belly and licking their lips like they were going to eat her unborn baby.
I think they just have a lot of dry mouth problems. I think you might have misinterpreted a cultural cue there. That's okay. I'll go through a refresher on you with you on the holodeck once we get everybody back.
Joe, what part of Alien Invasion are you just not getting here? I mean, even Janeway, the trap queen, sees the writing on the wall here. We need to lock these systems down. I think we might even need to get the emergency self-destruct in place. Janeway loves blowing the ship up.
I think the captain is just a little bit out of place here. It's a clear indicator that everything's okay. These aliens have silly hats.
What?
Silly hats. They don't have weird shit in their hair. They don't have some sort of strange forehead action or kind of ridges or cheekbones or anything like that. Like all the other races that ever threaten us, that's the thing. Shit in the hair, weird stuff on the forehead. These guys, they're just way silly hats. They must be fine.
Joe, you better hope I'm the next person to get abducted off this ship before I come over there and slap you in your fucking mouth.
Welcome to the 66th episode of Future Please, a hateful voice for the Delta Quadrant. My name is Joseph.
I'm Peter.
Can you believe that we've done 66 episodes of the show? Not counting
right.
live streams?
That's right, man. Order 66, kill all the Jedi. This is the good one. This is Palpy's choice over here.
And speaking of good ones, how about that for just the smoothest of segues? What did we watch this week?
So, I'm sorry, did you say good one? So listen. You're ready for an argument, folks. Season 3, episode 24, Displaced.
I want to go ahead and call it out from the beginning. We need to have some kind of theme song or visual or audio cue that we need to pipe in whenever there's a Voyager episode in which our heroes wind up in some kind of space prison, because it's almost every other fucking episode now.
Tried and true. There are quite a few tropes that we've established that get covered here. Miraculously, we don't end up seeing a shuttlecraft, but I'm guessing, now that I'm thinking about this episode as a whole, this was probably a low budget episode, huh?
Yeah, there was definitely some reuse. They did use a variety of sets. They all just look cheap as hell.
Mm-hmm.
um, I don't think I've watched this episode in 20 years, so this was an interesting experience to go back through.
Because at this point, the next one's going to be the Maquis Uprising episode, and then we get into Scorpion, which I'm guessing is probably going to be pretty special effects heavy. So this is like the lull, the financial lull before the big budget SFX storm.
Yeah, I gotta save those ducats for when you're gonna have your big Borg throwdown at the very end. So understandable in that regard. What is also understandable is a good bit of continuity at the beginning, because our opening scene is B'Elanna paying off the bet during the flirty interchange that she and Tom had during the previous episode about how they were going to go do Klingon calisthenics. And they're exiting the holodeck with B'Elanna carrying a batleth looking real pissed off, and Tom trying to convince her it was a good time. I will say, I love the civilian workout gear. That's actually well-designed civilian clothes.
Well, it's very clear that Tom Paris shops at H&M. B'Elanna, of all the times we can shove a woman in just skin-tight spandex cat suits, Kess, I'm looking at you, although hers are usually velvet. Instead, we've got B'Elanna in these loose-fitting, what I can only describe as Jedi robes.
Yeah, she's kind of got this, it's one of those vests, except it kind of comes all the way down to the knees. It is odd, but I kind of like it. It's better designed than a lot of the other clothes we've seen them wear. It's not Chakotay's drug rug, you know?
I was
It's
just
a little bit
about
more
to
elegant.
say.
We're on the
These guys
same
are
level.
these guys are definitely dressed better for the occasion than what old Chakotay brought out. So the continuity, and there's a fair amount of it to go around. There was certainly a lot in the last episode, Distant Origin, which I was listening to that episode yesterday, or this today and yesterday. That was a great episode. And I don't know if it really came through in our podcast, but there was so much to talk about, and I think that's really where I'm pulling a lot of my joy out of Voyager. Is, it doesn't have to be the best script, but I think if there's some meaty thought on the episode's bone for us to chew on and say what if and kind of flesh out, those are the ones I've really been drawn to. But continuity, it is just like a switch has been flipped somewhere in the writer room or the production team. I don't know, in the executive suites, but I would be very interested in seeing what series of events played out to suddenly change Voyager's ability to reflect on its own past.
Yeah, they seem to do everything in their power not to for the longest time. And I want to say the last half of this season, they seem to be more leaning into it now.
Mm-hmm.
Episodes about time travel that reference the past events accurately. It's been good. It's been a positive. It's been a value add. It makes it feel like more of a show with a continuous story than a series of bottle episodes.
Yeah.
And even this one, which I know that I threw it with, this was a good one. This was a very sort of blah experience overall. But what I enjoyed about it more than anything was that it felt like it was a continuation of Voyager's ongoing story. And in fact, this seems to happen almost right after Distant Origin, considering they're just now paying the bet off they just talked about in the prior episode.
Yeah.
So this was a 2 crisis paycheck for the Voyager crew.
Yeah, we did get some insight into where the timeline's been, and we haven't done any hard math in a while, but as of Distant Origin, we established that Basics was just over a year in show prior to that. So certainly we're not dealing with a crisis a week, but this is a back-to-back. Certainly a major kidnapping back-to-back.
Yeah, ship-wide kidnapping at that. They got all of Voyager jacked from them. But speaking of getting Voyager jacked from them, B'Elanna's doing her "I am an angry Klingon" thing because she doesn't want to do Klingon reindeer games, and Tom really likes it, and It's their attempt to kind of like build romantic tension between the two. One of the big criticisms of Voyager in terms of his character development is that they tried to make this happen, and they eventually just force it, right? They just make it happen, and I think that in their first foray into building romantic tension between them in Blood Fever, I felt like that was well done, and
Yes.
the actors were kind of in the zone with that one, and they made some chemistry happen there that you bought it, and
Yes.
so they decided to go with it from that point. But I don't. It's like the opposite of chemistry in this episode between the two of them.
I think they did more in Distant Origin with side conversations of him ribbing her about her trashy romance novel than all of the dedicated scenes that this episode got. But we get cut out of their boring little argument by the sudden appearance of a very frumpy looking man and I tried hard, Joe. I put the TV on pause and I was like, this is an awful costume.
Yes,
What am I going to call these guys?
hobo popes.
That's a good one. I
Thank you. I worked on that all day.
I said, all right, they kind of look like Lego peasants, like medieval set Lego peasants from the Castle collection. Ultimately, I decided to call them the Sad Sacks because they're all very sad, and they are certainly dressed in what appears to be sacks.
Okay, hobo pope, Lego peasant, sad sacks.
Mm-hmm.
To describe these people, they seem to be wearing gray, frumpy robes with some shit on their chests as designs,
Mm-hmm.
and they uniformly, to a person, are wearing something between a bargain pope hat, like a pope hat that you would get at Spencer's, and I don't know if you've watched Game of Thrones, the hats the Freys wear is what it looks like, and they're humans, right? They're just normal dudes.
My wife likened them the hats to penis hats. It looks like the meatus of a penis around their head. Yeah, and we just talked about in Distant Origin the prevalence of human knockoffs floating around the Delta Quadrant, and why would the dinosaur people decide that the dino dudes decide that Voyager was, of course, the one true Homo sapien that they're going to trace all this to. These guys are dead fucking ringers. There is not a single thing alien. This is the laziest costume. Sad sacks are the new low bar of Delta Quadrant costuming. And
hold on.
Yeah, it's worse than the candy corn. I'm saying it right now.
I cannot agree with you if you're saying that these guys are worse than the candy corn people.
At least the candy corn were like somewhat visually striking. Like
Bro, they're visually striking because they got discount Kwanzaa gear that they got from the dollar store. That's it. These guys at least have hats. That makes them better.
Yeah, but the candy corn guys punched Janeway in the jaw, and that gives them bonus points in my book. Sad sacks are the worst.
And they had sweet space glocks.
Yeah. Yeah. The first sad sack we get treated to is what's this guy's name? I don't even care. Damar, who's played by Kenneth Tiger. And the last time that we have seen this guy in the world of Star Trek was from an old Next Gen episode where he was the leader of basically a bunch of drug addicts floating around in space. It was a symbiosis. I don't know if you remember, like, these guys are getting sold space drugs, being told that it's medicine they need to help them feel better. And it was that goofy situation where, like, Picard figured out just space narcotics, but the Prime Directive wouldn't let him tell these drug addicts that they're drug addicts. So instead, he just leaves their ship all fucked up, so they all have to go through detox.
That's awful. That sounds like some season 1 shit.
When was that? Yeah, well, I'd trade that in happily. That was, season 1, episode 22. Good call on that one, Joe.
That makes sense.
But he's like, oh my gosh, how did I get here? one second everything was fine, and now I'm hearing it's so cold and it's so bright. And they whisk him off to sickbay to check him out and see what's going on. Now, at this point, it seems innocent enough, right? But, and I'm going to focus in on this right now. How many times have we had someone either abducted off the ship through some sort of nefarious technology, or dudes just straight up trying to steal shuttlecrafts and leave?
They try to address that quickly. They have the scene in sickbay where the doctor kind of checks this guy out. He explains his story. He says, I was just walking down the street, minding my own business, and all of a sudden I felt like I got pulled through space-time and just wound up here. I don't know why I'm here. And, Captain is like trying to be empathetic, like, well, this is some weird shit. We'll try and figure out what's going on. And they realize after the doctor kind of like, without asking, tries to get Tuvok to help be his nurse for a second. Like, oh, where's Kes? I don't know. She's late. And then they try and find out where she is, and she's not on the ship, and she got transported away the same time this dopey sad sack guy showed up.
We've gone through this so many times. Like, set it that if the communicator is not on the ship's network, someone somewhere gets an alert like, hey, crewman Kes is no longer on the ship.
Oh, hey, you got to build that dramatic tension moment, man.
I know, but
how many times have
we've
seen the writer's notes where they talk about like how hard it is sometimes to write around the super technology of the 24th century to create tension in a 45-minute episode? I get it. The struggle is real. That's why there's never subdiurnal communicators except when the plot calls for it, right? Like, we've been down that road a couple times. Same situation here. The comm badges don't tell you when people leave because that would eliminate the moment that you have here where you're like, oh, Kes is gone. There's people being transported off too. Bah, bah, bah. I'm not even going to do the sound effect. It's so stupid. So
I want to talk about Kes. We are now effectively 2 episodes, and as I'm going to require this episode to be titled the second until Jeri Ryan.
Okay.
The second before Jeri Ryan comes.
That's for you, Casey, just in case you hear this.
Yeah. But this is effectively becoming the second before Kes really gets ushered out. And I'm not sure when exactly we part ways with her, but we're getting towards the end of the Kes experience, which has been pretty great, all things considered. What a squandered opportunity, I think, in this episode, which doesn't really have a lot going on. We're getting rid of her. She's kind of seen her own future. When they're like, oh, where's Kes at? She started dating. We've already established that in the space trucker episode. Like, throw some cool stuff out about her. I don't know. Maybe she stayed out late on a date, this or that. Like, they're not really doing anything with her at this point. It's very clear she's lame duck. There's no exploration whatsoever, especially in light of what was the one where she was just going quantum leaping through her own life? What was that called?
Oh, we did that just 2 episodes ago. The basically the best of Kes time travel episode.
But she has had this very intense relationship with Tom Paris in the future. And even if she didn't recognize Tom as she began the journey backwards, like, he was there 110% further. And there's no attempt on her end whatsoever to explore any sort of relationship with him, which I think is kind of a squandered, not even a token gesture. So her involvement in this ultimately being the first absent body, I think, is a real whiff.
There's been very little in the way of her or Neelix lately. I think Neelix has been a one-line hero 2 episodes, almost 3 episodes in a row. He's barely in this one too.
I suppose, to be fair, Kes did have a whole episode dedicated to her in Spider Tuvok. What was the Maglift episode? That was
Spider Tuvok. Rise. That was Rise.
So, I mean, they did just have a lot of limelight on them, but still, with her about to be removed from the show, I thought we could have given her a little bit better wind down. But as you pointed out, she's gone, and now we've got a double mystery. Where are these aliens coming from? Where are our crew members going? I wonder.
They note that essentially one person gets transposed once every 9 minutes and 45 seconds, so 10 minutes. and they start losing people almost right away that they're noticing. Harry Kim's like the first bridge officer to leave. It's right after B'Elanna has a "Hey Harry, am I a bitch?" conversation with him, but she does it like in that stereotypical "Am I a bitch?" And Harry's just intimidated because he's super beta, and that's just the way his character is. And he gets yoinked into the nether realm, and they have a senior staff meeting with the people who are left to determine what's going on, trying to analyze the situation, and that the clock is ticking, and then in about 18 hours, everyone is going to be gone. And it is Janeway, of all people. Of all people. Of all people.
That's how predictable this is. Janeway, who 10 out of 10 times will walk with open arms and hug the slimy Armus skin of evil villain and try to embrace them and look past the bad to the good, only to be crushed at the end that she was not able to overcome the friendship bridge and do the Janeway of all people to say, no, these motherfuckers are bad news and we got to deal with this.
Yeah. Straight away. Chakotay's the one like, oh, they seem fine. And Janeway's like, are they? Like, this seems super convenient for them. They've shown up on the ship. They're slowly replacing us.
Just plain stupid.
Yeah, I think we need to keep a real close eye on them. We need to figure out what the hell is going on before we all get got, because I don't trust them.
And Janeway trusts everybody. Like, this took me so far out of the episode that she is the critical doubter of this entire plot.
I've never seen a situation to this point in the show where they have actually put her in the active category of these people are shitbags. Yeah. It's always somebody else that is bringing it up, and Janeway is either receptive to the idea or not, but she's never the one who's like, these guys are shady as fuck. I don't like it.
And we might be overstating this, but that's how big of a deal. She always gives people the benefit of the doubt. And this one, she's like, we need to build concentration camps in the cargo bays and put armed guards there, like mutant internment camps now.
I don't think we're overstating it, because we both noticed how completely
out of
character it is. Yeah. Like, hey, 66 episodes in, we've watched them all. We've talked longer about them than the episodes themselves almost every time. We know what's going on in the show. We know every detail. And this is fucking weird. Like, that alone should have gotten like everybody else. Be like, man, Janeway thinks these people are fucking whack. I gotta reassess
no shit.
My life.
I'm watching this because this is when I'm still paying attention, because I think the episode might actually be interesting.
Womp womp.
This is so out of character for her. My first thought was like, they're not just replacing people physically. There's like body snatchers going on, and that's not real Janeway. There's a third party. Like how Kim got like, we need to shoot these guys now. Like, she is so out of character, hostile towards these guys. I really believe that she had been body swapped with someone, and that the real Janeway had been whisked away, and this was a body double.
It's a legitimate theory. Yeah. They continue to have swaps happen. Torres comes to the theory that there might be a wormhole that they snagged onto the moment it was forming, and that's caused them to like have people sucked into wherever these guys are from. And it just so happens that there's a friendly scientist of the sad sacks who's willing to assist with analyzing this information.
He's a sad scientist.
Yeah, he's super uncooperative and immediately does a bunch of shady shit when he goes to engineering to try and help B'Elanna solve the problem, because she's actually figuring out that it's not a wormhole and this is artificial and someone's making this happen. As is tradition, though, the armed security guard that is down in engineering just gets got by this rumpy old man, just rumpy old dude. just fucking judo chops him in the neck and fucking takes his gat and makes it so that B'Elanna gets disappeared next in the train. And of course, The obvious is now out there in the open to everybody. These guys are bad and they're taking over the ship.
Surprise.
Janeway was right. Yeah, it's a big shocker. When B'Elanna shows up where everyone's been transported to, it looks like a standard. It almost looks like the Resian / Polynesian resort background, just like in white instead of yellow.
It's like Florida.
Yeah, it looks like Florida. It's supposed to be nice. And she like goes to Janeway and is like, "Oh, hey, the sad sacks are responsible for all this." And she's got that bitch I know, and she points to the like fucking dudes there with guns. Like, you should just turn around. We know.
Speaking of guns, my gun fetish. I love eyeballing these props. Those guns look familiar to you?
I'm sure you're gonna tell me where they're from, my friend. So I won't spoil.
Man, that's GIMP police guns.
Oh, really? Those are GIMP suit. Those are GIMP suit human guns.
Yeah.
I'm glad I got a reuse on that, and not the GIMP suits with the motorcycle helmets. Those can stay in the closets where they got put after. Ugh.
Yeah, right with the alien. I'm sorry, the robot sex dolls.
There's so much ball sweat just between the two of those. Yeah. Anyway, all right. So they take her comm badge. They're trying to figure out what's going on. These sad sacks have food replicators basically, and like living amenities, and they brought them medical supplies, but will not fucking answer any questions. And Tuvok went around to a whole bunch of different compounds where all the crew has been spread out, and has come to the conclusion that there seems to be these mysterious physical barriers that are hemming them in. They're basically in a weird geological prison that seems to be somehow magically perfect for them, and they rightly all are under the impression that thus it must be artificial as a consequence.
The prison that these guys get left in, Janeway even offers a hypothesis that she wouldn't be surprised if this whole thing was holographic. I think it's interesting that, again, jumping back to season 1, Next Gen, where we really start introducing the holodeck and what it is and wasn't. And we see a couple design jumps, and they're surprised at how realistic it can seem. But I'm curious at this point in the Voyager technology tree, if your average Starfleet person is able to tell the difference between real versus holodeck. And I would have to think, yes, like even if these aliens do have like super fantastic technology, there's got to be something that kind of sets that thing apart. And it's interesting to think that they could be tricked into a holographic prison like that.
I completely and absolutely agree that these 26th century space people who are used to being surrounded by technology and by artificial environments have maybe some kind of like because they've experienced the artificial environment and the real environment all the time, that they may have a sense of the difference that goes beyond just visual. I liken it to like when you enter the room and you can't see it, but you know the television's on.
Yeah,
you get that like a feeling that electronics are on somewhere and that might, something like that might be what clues them in.
Real sunlight versus certain lights, a genuinely cold room versus something that's been air conditioned. And I think really, now that I'm putting my mind into it, I think the best way to play the game of is it holographic or not is to lick it. Lick the bench, lick the plant, lick the rock. It's the only way to be sure. That's going to be my go-to. If I ever think that I might be in some sort of a holographic situation, the tongue's coming out.
So, licking the holographic emitters aside, the folks on Voyager are led by Chakotay, and it's basically background extras that are left. There's no named crew left.
Like I said, it's a cheap episode.
And some of them actually get lines, which is for some of these people the only lines they get in the entire series. And some of them show up again, like as continuously as background extras. This is like their moment to get that sweet IMDb credit. And they have gotten wise now to the fact that the sad sacks are behind the disappearances because Chakotay goes to the cargo bay and finds it all gone. I think he gets alerted that something's up because someone finds the useless ass security guard that got judo chopped by an old man in engineering, and he's like, "Oh, fuck." So you see I guess a desperate last ditch effort on the part of all the background extras to hold the ship, and they all just kind of getting hot game run on them by the sad sacks. And the only one who actually puts up a real fight is Chakotay himself, who actually does cool terrorism shit for like the first time ever.
With zero mention of the Maquis background that he has. And this is a big thing I want to get into. Finish up your thought and then let's jump on this.
Yeah, he goes all around the ship. He's pulling like systems apart. He's blowing up, EPS conduits. He's taking main power offline. He's a one-man wrecking crew sabotaging this ship in essentially like the last 10 minutes that he has, going like from spot to spot. He knows exactly what to do to fucking get this. Now, I didn't need them to explain. He probably knows how to do this because he's a fucking terrorist, so he knows how to sabotage a Federation starship. But there may be a slight mention, a reminder to the audience that, he puts on his old Solid Snake bandana, says, I do it for Lon, and then, goes on his spree.
I won't drag us down that emotional hardship of wishing that Lon was back with us in yet another perfectly crafted situation that he would have flourished in. But we've seen some pretty cool firefights on the show at this point, the best of which being the Chakotay Oregon Trail astral projection fight where Tuvok was evil and the wide dispersal beam firefight on the bridge. This episode has the worst firefight on the bridge.
Oh, yes, it does. Oh, my God.
How do you make a gunfight in the command center so boring? I think I missed it because I'm like talking to my wife instead of bothering to watch this gunfight. It was miserable. And again, we joked about it in the skit. And at no point, even when Janeway's in there saying, hey, we need to start locking, putting these guys under lock and key, is anybody's like, I'd rather blow the fucking ship up than hand it off to weirdo aliens. And we go for that auto-destruct button at the literal drop of a hat. Any reason Janeway's got to blow the ship up, especially if it's a situation where you're dealing with an alien invasion factor, be it the Kazon or even the Vidians. She's ready to blow that motherfucker up. Here, nothing. It's very clear that they know that they're going to get the ship back and they want to leave it in a very repairable situation. But yeah.
Well, Janeway is gone before they come to the conclusion that these guys are absolutely behind it.
She's got that knot in her stomach. She knows. And
she does, but it's before it gets paid off. And words cannot describe it wasn't even half-assed. It was quarter-assed fight that they have on the bridge of a bunch of extras versus the sad sacks. I mean, it was just emblematic of the episode itself of just like, meh.
I also think it's interesting.
People are just standing around and just get shot. Like the one extra who's got lines, like shoots one, but it's just standing in the middle, like, like come at me, bro. And they end up getting everybody. It is just what? It's just so stupid. It's like, I can't. Why did they shoot it that way? Was that your best take? Really?
The sad sacks are also a bunch of ugly old men and very mediocre looking people. Even the space Amish from Tuvok in charge were more attractive people than the actors and actresses that they have portraying the villains in this. So yes, they look like regular humans if you're not drawing out of an attractive Hollywood casting pool. And watching a bunch of old men wrestle the control of the ship away is sad. The biggest miss in this episode for me is this is a great situation to point out the difference between the Federation and Starfleet and the Maquis. Because like you said, in this point in the plot, it becomes imperative that they handicap the ship so when it does fall into the wrong hands, since they're not willing to blow it up, that it's a useless turd. And Chakotay does a great job of that. But I would have liked to see the rest of the crew identify some other Maquis people and show them just outclassing the Federation when it comes to wrecking shit. And later in the episode, we're going to see the prisoners, the Starfleet prisoners, start fashioning their own weapons, like MacGyvering together what at first appear to be lightsabers, but are in fact like steampunk phasers. And it's Tuvok doing it. And it's like, this seems so right up Maquis alley. Why is it not the Maquis kind of proving their worth to the crew? And even
like improvised weapons, guerrilla tactics, jailbreaks. These are the things that you have terrorist coworkers for.
Yeah.
Like, this is where you're like, hey guys, listen, it's your time to shine. It's like, go get them.
Let's talk about the scene right now where they're building the hobo phaser.
One other thing I want to say before we explore the hobo phaser, which is just amazing all on its own. We have heard these guys referred to as a bunch of murderous malcontents by Chakotay himself in the past, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they have said on screen, like, their biggest defender is like, these guys are just they got into this because they wanted to fucking get some dirt on their hands. Like, that's
not
this
dirt,
is who
blood.
we are. Yeah.
Lon Suder, we joke about it, as a fucking serial killer.
And then they did say, like, we always thought he was a little, like, close to the edge of crazy. And that was, like, the big thing in that episode where B'Elanna and Chakotay sort of, like, look at each other when it's brought up that Lon might be involved. And they're like, he probably did it. Like, he's got the for real fucking murder eye.
I want to say,
Janeway is like, you didn't tell me this fucking shit before. The fuck is wrong with you?
Well, we didn't want you to kick us off on the nearest planet. I think that scene you're talking about where B'Elanna and Chakotay both look like they just shit their pants. I think that might be my favorite moment in Voyager history, period. It was such good physical acting. It was everything I want Voyager to be in one moment. But
no, the best physical acting was Chakotay rolling his eyes when he got told he had to take Neelix in Twisted. He's like, fuck. That was the best physical acting, aside from maybe the Dolby punch. Man, Chakotay's still involved in a lot of these.
L Train, man. What a fucking...
what a legend.
Ghost Rider just coming out of nowhere. Dude's a fucking ninja. Stealing all the he's got to charge up his laser. That's what it comes down to.
Speaking of lasers, let's talk about the hobo phaser.
Well, okay, so their Voyager is in arguably its third worst predicament ever, right? I would say the worst predicament for Voyager as a whole was Deadlock, where the entire crew was getting murdered and organ thieved in the hallways, right?
Yeah, agreed.
The second, Basics, where your season-long enemy, the Kazon, have finally one-upped you under the skillful command of the Obsidian agent Burn Queen. And now this, you've had the ship completely wrestled away from you. You haven't suffered any casualties. It hasn't necessarily been violent, but you are all going to be stuck in some sort of a jail for the rest of your lives while your sweet-ass Federation technology falls into the wrong hands. This is go time across the board, and I just don't feel like the crew is treating it like the huge threat that it is. We cut over to Tuvok and Chakotay, and like I said, it looks like he's got some sort of a lightsaber. Neelix comes over saying he's pulled some parts off the wall, which if it's a big holodeck, are they getting capacitors and servos and whatever else? And Chakotay's talking to Tuvok, and he's like, wow, you're really surprising me at how you're improvising with all this. Tuvok's talking about some riots he was in. And then Chakotay tells a story about, this reminds me of training exercises in the Federation and, being left out into rugged wildness. And I was like, what? They're trying so hard right now, I feel, to whitewash his background, to get rid of these terrorist roots. Like, this is the perfect time to talk about, like, shit like this is what we dealt with every day in the Maquis. Tuvok even leave Tuvok to make the phaser and say, Tuvok, it's a damn shame that you were really a Starfleet officer the whole time, because man, did you make a great in the dirt terrorist when you were infiltrating my crew. Like, so many good callback opportunities, such a prime time for the Maquis backgrounds to shine and flourish. Instead, you've got the leader of the Maquis talking about during my time in Starfleet and training exercises and blah, blah, blah. Like, dude, this isn't what you're supposed to be.
I completely agree with your entire rant there, man. Like, I think we both have an affection for the early gritty Maquis stuff, that there was a potential there that goes untapped, and there isn't even a word of acknowledgement in the episode about it. I didn't necessarily need a self-referential moment on Chakotay's part while he's sabotaging the ship, but at some point, some acknowledgement that these Maquis guys bring the prison shank level, grittiness to the table as a bonus for when Voyager needs it, particularly when they're fucking in prison as a team again, with access to kit bash, technological tools. It was a great opportunity, and they declined to explore it. We do instead get like some sweet Tuvok shade at Chakotay, which I will always enjoy, because the sort of low level antagonism that these two have for each other is definitely been a through line through the series. And Neelix comes over with all the parts he pilfered, and Tuvok, acknowledges the receipt of the parts and that he's going to be able to make his second weapon if he can get one more piece. And then Chakotay says, "So that would assumes that the first one will work." And then Tuvok just looks over at him and says, "Yes." It's like, bitch, are you for real? Yes. Yes, I'm assuming my fucking hobo phaser will work. Would you rather assume it didn't? The fuck is wrong with you? It's like with this time that I made a bow and arrow and you thought it was for you. No, bitch, it wasn't for you. It was for me.
Yeah.
Because I do archery. Never everything's about you. And then they have like a talk about like all the survival stuff, and Tuvok's like, "Yeah, I had to survive like 5 months in the Vulcan desert with a knife. I'm way cooler than all of you terrorists. Whatever.
I just looked it up. So it's the right of Tarmarath or something. I thought he was saying the riots at Tarmarath. I was like, how the hell is a Vulcan ending up in the Vulcan youth ending up in the middle of riot zones in the enlightened post scarcity of Federation? More shades of the Mary Sueisms of how wonderful and cool and badass Vulcans are.
When they're not trying to rape their coworkers. Obviously, when that's exception in those moments. The rest of the episode is a total snooze fest. All of the interesting things have now happened. I guess we have to point out, Chakotay nabbed the doctor on the way out, put him in the middle of Mitter, and they essentially use him as a tricorder to find little portals. Because what happens is a nearby reptilian alien, helpful hobo alien, comes by, bamfing out of the wall, and is like, "Hey guys, I'm your neighbor." And they find out, of course, that they're in a technological prison. This is after all of the sad sacks have left and taken Voyager, and they say, "Yeah, we just fucking take shit this way because it's easier than killing everybody. So enjoy your prison. It's could be worse. We could have killed you, and then just fuck off."
I like the lizard neighbor. I thought he was one of the better parts of the episode. I thought he would have been a cool like recruitment option, but that's already kind of what Neelix does. I'd like to see some scenes between him and Neelix. I thought those would have been fun. Instead, he just deals with Janeway, who basically tries to bribe him with trail mix and popcorn balls.
There's so much... but I was watching this with Stevie, and she like Janeway like has that sort of like sultry diplomatic pose that she kind of goes into, not quite flirty.
Yeah.
But just maybe
Swanky.
A tiny bit flirty. A little, just a touch that she like pulls over the food. It's like, "We can work together." And he's like, "Oh, I'm a little hesitant." And then she pulls over the other basket of food.
Do you want to do the lick test, lizard man?
And it's like, it just dips a little bit into the flirty angle. Stevie looks over at me. He's like, Are is Janeway gonna fuck that alien? Because that just made me feel like Janeway was gonna like give him a quickie or something in exchange for his like portal gun. I mean, what is ew?
This episode, it feels like just a bunch of different rehashes jammed together and warmed back up. Like, this is all shit we've already done. We just got done dealing with lizard dinosaur men. We already had aliens kick Voyager off the ship. We've already had having to retake it and sabotaging things. Like, it just doesn't do any of them really well for me. Chakotay's decision to grab the doctor seemed so counterintuitive. The last time this happened, Basics 1 and 2, the doctor specifically, and Lon Suder, of course, two people retook the entire ship, and they're the only reasons why Starfleet got back onto their starship and was able to continue the journey. Him taking the doctor away when the rest of them are being teleported off, like, why would you take the ace up your sleeve and bring it with you? Like, how would you possibly know? Whatever. Just the tricorder functionality stuff aside, just, hey, here's a super capable dude who I will also point out, whatever happened with the Jekyll and Hyde doctor episode from Darkling, he has retained his proficiency with fucking dudes up with hypo sprays. When the sad sacks are trying to force their way into the med bay doors like zombies, and Chakotay's working feverishly to try and get his program into the mobile holo emitter, the first guy kind of sticks his head through the door like, oh, we see you. And the doctor just gets right in there with a ninja and takes him out.
It's like, hold on. I got a chance to inject one dude with some shit that, I don't know, might kill him. I don't actually know anything about their physiology, really.
Hey,
this could be murder juice.
Real quick, full disclosure, before you take my transporter with you to wherever the fuck you're going, I've been lying this whole time. Evil doctor is still in me. I just took my dentures out. I've just been chilling, waiting for my chance to kill all you guys, but I'm here. I'm willing to kill. Leave me here. I'll kill all these guys and I'll come pick you up. Deal? And then just freeze frame on Chakotay's face as he's like slack jawed and gets teleported away, and then goes back into like, hey, B'Elanna, did you ever actually run that deep scan on the doctor?
Or he's like, I built in a Lon Suder
protocol.
Yeah, like in honor of my fallen comrade, and he just like hits some buttons on the console, and he just like actually turns into Lon Suder. It's like complete with programmed crazy eye. Slaps on the mobile emitter.
Grabs his pipe. Now you're talking my language. Hey, yeah. Chakotay, in the wake of B'Elanna psychologically torturing me with the death of my child, I decided I don't want to be good anymore, and I'm going to embrace my evil side. So excuse me while I go inject this dude full of some sort of space poison. That stuff I replicated out of Kulla's sweet decoder ring.
Yeah, Kulla's sweet assassin dude.
What if the doctor's got that on and that guy comes in and he just twists the thing, pops out, and jabs the guy in the neck? Be like, good enough for the Kazon, good enough for the sad sacks. None of that fun stuff happens, though, at all.
No, none of that happens. Instead,
in fact, what we have to deal with is more, again, in the middle of the worst crisis, the third worst crisis that Voyager has suffered since their arrival in this goddamn quadrant. We have more domestic disputes between Tom and B'Elanna.
God, I cannot emphasize enough the negative zone in which these two's chemistry has vanished is awful. They were so on point when they did Blood Fever. I don't know if it was that they, Roxanne Dawson was just dialed up to 11 because of the subject matter or what. But whatever these two had going as far as like building chemistry with each other and making you buy a romantic relationship to is just evaporated into nothingness. And they're trying to build this sort of, they really like each other, but they're having difficulty really like connecting with each other in a way that is lasting because she's a Klingon and he's like a free spirit convict. They're trying to do that, but there's no like spark. There's no emotion. It's just two wood planks just bashing into each other while the Doctor makes snide comments. It's dumb, and I hate it.
So I think this is Lisa Klink, and I want to call her
It's
Lisa
Lisa Kink.
Kink, but there's just nothing sexy going on. She's had some sexy episodes before, and whether it was good writing or bad writing, at least you kind of felt what she was going for. And maybe that was just her influence on this episode of trying to make there be something sexy, but this is just, I think the stakes are supposed to be too high. Nobody's recognized. I mean, look at what's going on. These guys are completely cut off. They're stuck in a space jail that's technologically superior to the chute, which had everybody dead to rights. They've got nobody on the ship. You know, there's no Suder, there's no Doctor. They're just completely fucked. And nobody's like shit in the bed. Nobody's like shit in their pants worried about this stuff. So these domestic disputes, I think, just kind of clown that in even more. And it's all a big waste of time. And I think a real low point for their performance. They find a way to hack the door. They get out. They start sneaking around the space station, which is kind of like a skeleton crew. It's a big ship full of different biospheres, and each one is a massive holodeck. They kind of go channel surfing and see the different environments out there and open random doors and get treated to wild vistas. Luckily, none of which are, full of poisonous gases for alien races that are incompatible with humans, and nobody's lungs get melted or anything fun like that.
They jailbreak from the prison. They find the prison controls. Because they're Magic Federation science people, they suddenly know how to read an alien language and reprogram an alien computer, and they find all the other habitats on this weird space station prison that they're in, and eventually they figured their way out of the problem by starting to transport the sad sacks to a Hoth planet,
Mm-hmm.
a Hoth habitat, which is extremely bad for them physiologically.
Fun
like straight
point
up killed two of them.
Yeah. Fun part about the Hoth planet was the throwaway dialogue that Klingons do not do well in the cold. And then Paris is like, well, I thought, that was a Cardassians. And she says, no, the Cardassians just cry more about it than we do. But she's not doing good, and he's got to start holding her to warm them up. I'll also point out that when the two sad sacks die in front of them, their wonky steampunk phaser has broken, and they don't just grab those dudes' guns, which would have been the smart thing to do, but whatever. And Janeway takes over the technology. They start pulling the leadership off of Voyager, which is speeding back to try to provide assistance. What really doesn't click for me with these sad sacks is that there's no real consequence on the line. Like, their whole concept seems real hokey. They've got, and again, we're retreading ground. They are misrepresenting what seem like third-party disasters. So the same as Rise, right? The asteroid carpetbaggers. They're going to create a disaster on the planet with asteroids, make it seem like it was just an unsuitable planet, and then they come in and they set up a colony and they take everything over. Same deal with these guys. They slowly, one at a time, replace the crew, and then now they've got a new space station or a colony or a spaceship or whatever, but they're just putting all these guys on this big-ass vessel. Like, if you can build a huge holodeck vessel that's going to house thousands of people for essentially the rest of their lives, what do you need to go steal other people's ships for? You obviously have wild technology.
I'm really glad you're bringing this up, because there's also my complaint as well. The idea of these guys showing up and using their dopey, we don't know what's going on shtick to steal people's stuff is not itself a bad idea. That could be quite a good idea, particularly for a bunch of space con artists or space gypsies or whatever. That would be neat. But they don't do anything to explain why the hell they have to do this, other than they just don't like fighting. I came up with this whole idea in my head after watching the episode of what if, they're right on the border of Borg space, right? We know that they are. They know that we are. The show knows that they are. So what if they're this is how people, Delta Quadrant's already wild enough. But on the edges of where the Borg are, it's every fucking man for themselves. And that means that these guys, they take every scrap of technology that comes meandering down the path. They, they seize control of stuff, and they even just warehouse the people they steal it from. You never know when you might have to like float one of these little habitats out into the middle of Borg space to like get a cube off your back, right?
Sure.
Like there was some like dark, interesting, inappropriate paths that this idea could have gone down that would have been cool. They just don't really ever explain any of it. It's just over. I mean, it's the standard. Once again, I mean, at some point, you should go back through every fucking episode where I say this, because I'm sure at this point we're past 24 of good idea, bad execution. They had a germination of like a clever thing, and they're like, and it flies away like a bird, and they just don't like, bye, see ya, whatever, bye. We didn't need to develop you or anything. It's fine.
There's nothing
totally
nefarious.
Fine.
There's nothing nefarious. You saying space con artists sounds awesome, but they're not. These are just mopey, sad sack guys. Well, we're really nice and sorry we got to do this, but we're taking your shit. Like, put some sort of edge that puts urgency on this. And maybe that's why Tom and Balan are sitting there getting in fights about their date that sucked. And maybe I don't want to talk to you anymore. It's because they're just in a little paradise. Like, okay, put the hidden agenda. By the way, the biosphere ship is flying back to the Vidians, where you're going to be sold as slaves for parts. And that's our thing. We go out and we acquire technology, and we buy protection from the, rest of the Delta Quadrant by slave trading people. Sure, now these guys are suddenly interesting. Now there's a reason why I want to see Voyager fight hard to get out of there. It doesn't exist. And also, too...
They didn't have to do much to make it interesting, and they did nothing.
These guys come off as two-dimensional because there's nothing to hang on to. Like, a lot of times you've got bad guys that are bad for no reason and they seem like they're two-dimensional. These guys are just so flat and boring they're two-dimensional. And then the technology scale in this is crazy. So Janeway gets the upper hand. She starts stunting on these guys. She gets the sad sack leader with her on Hoth, and she's like, you're going to turn my ship over and blah, 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 or else I'm going to leave you to be in the cold. And he's like, no, fuck you. And then she's like, well, I already did this with the space clown. I'll see you later. No, wait. Okay, yeah, sure. We'll let you enslave us. And then she's going to return everybody to their home colonies or whatever, which, what's the impact that's going to have on the Delta Quadrant? A bunch of people coming home. Is that going to buy her some credit on next door? Who knows? But you got two huge acquisitions as part of them taking over this ship. And I would say, I understand a lot of time if they're not willing to steal people's technology, but in this case, to the victor go the spoils of war. They tried to steal your ship. Help yourself. You've got this wild ass transporter technology where you can beam people off of a ship from light years away, right? Super far away. Like, how valuable is that? And I think that'd be something really cool, is that when Voyager comes home to the Alpha Quadrant, that they've brought all of this amazing information, knowledge, and technology with them. So you've got the most powerful transporter technology ever, and some crazy ass scanners. Because this little con job that the sad sacks run is fully dependent on the fact that we are going to prey on cultures and vessels that are not going to fuck us up out of the gate. Because if you pulled this shit on the Klingons or the Romulan or Ferengi or anything else, your ass would be getting shot and probably eaten. But, they knew that the Federation was nice, hippy-dippy, and was going to let them run this game until it was too late. That means that they had the ability to scan and observe and pry into databases and basically remote, which they even say in the episode, we already know how this stuff works because we've observed their systems from super far away. So you got crazy sensors, you got crazy transporters, and I'm guessing that's the last we ever hear of either of these things because they just don't acquire the technology for themselves.
Well, you nailed it. I mean, I don't know. There's nothing else to say. Because you said it all. This episode is not the worst, because the worst is like actively hateful.
Yeah.
Like, it makes me regret watching it. It's not even like good bad. It's not like ridiculous and enjoyable as a consequence of how stupid it is. It's just another in a long line of lost opportunities that is a little worse than some of the others because of no chemistry between your your romantic B plot and a total lack of development of your primary villain.
I'm gonna
Of
say,
course, Voyager gets the ship back. Of course, everyone gets to go home. Of course, Tom and B'Elanna make up a little bit, and Voyager flies off. The end.
I'm gonna give this one a D, which is pretty low. Like you said, it's not terrible. It's not 37s. It's not a low gem. It's not time and again. But I want to say this is probably one of the worst ones that we've seen in season 3. And we've been on such a good roll. Like, I can't even remember really what's the last legitimately bad episode we've watched. Like, the big crime for me is to feel like I'm wasting my time. And I started falling asleep, like not paying attention to this episode. I was like, man, what a weird sensation. Because I've been pretty glued to these Voyagers, for better or for worse. You know, even Favorite Son, objectively a terrible episode, but man, it was fun, and the thought experimentation and everything else. But this was just a boring fucking waste that I regret having watched. So,
going back through season 3, because we're close to the end now, and thinking of the last time we saw like something that was like this, a D episode, not the worst, but also not like enjoyably bad or interesting. Like Favorite Son is a perfect example of good bad.
Excellent bad. I love
yeah, excellent bad. Before that was Rise, which I think we just liked. Before that was Darkling, which was again like
great,
great, good doctor,
good laughs, great laughs.
Unity, which was the first Borg, like big Borg episode.
Don't drink the Cube-Aid, man. Good one.
Blood Fever. Of
awesome.
course, everyone enjoyed the trip to the Caves of Hell fuck palace. I think the last like truly like just bad episode we watched was Coda, which was the one that didn't know what the fuck it wanted to be about Janeway having near-death experiences. And there's a mind demon that sucks up everyone's souls and shit. Like, that was just bafflingly stupid. That's the last time, and that was 10 episodes ago.
Crazy. That's more than 10 weeks of you and me watching this, because we've had a couple breaks in there. It's been a long time. And even Coda, you know, the test of time in my mind is when I look back on my notes and I listen to you talk about these things, like, I cut all the bullshit about Coda out. I just remember there are mind parasite hell demons in the Delta Quadrant. Do not go in the white light. Like, how fucking wild is that? Even knowing that is now canon is some sort of redeeming feature. But this thing is just like, yeah, there's super good transporters out there, and Voyager just squandered it.
I think you'd have to go all the way back to the Q and the Gray to get like something that was just angry. It just made us angry, right? Like, that was just so bad. It made us angry, and that was the 11th episode of the season, and this was the 24th. So I think Voyager has had a pretty good season 3.
Pretty great season. And let's talk about why that is. We're getting into mess hall top, or, rip. I think if we were to go back and try and find at what point Voyager let itself start becoming self-referential, that's probably how we started ending up with quantifiable good episodes that are fun and better podcast material and all that other stuff. So that's going to be some homework for me, is to see where do we start self-referring, and when do we feel that exact intersection is where Voyager comes into its own. All right, Joe, can only go forward though.
Yeah, what are we watching next week?
We're watching the one before Jeri Ryan appears. I'm sorry. Watching season 3, episode 25, Worst Case Scenario. We see a very dark and brooding looking Chakotay holding a phaser, along with the Queen of Burns herself, Seska. Members of the Voyager crew clandestinely participate in a hidden holodeck program where the ship's Maquis members stage an insurrection.
So there's a backstory to this that you don't know that I'm going to tell you. I rewatched this one very recently, and in fact, it was in rewatching this episode that I finally decided to ask you if you wanted to do this podcast. And it wasn't because this episode is bad. In fact, I would consider this one of my personal favorites. But it was an episode that I'm like, you know what? This show's got enough meat on its bones that I think we can pull this off. And I'm excited to obviously get a chance to watch it again and then discuss it with you, given that setup.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Any chance to get back in with what's her name, Martha Hackett?
Yep, Martha Hackett, good old Queen of Burns Seska. Return of our mascot. Well, our mascot is Lon Suder, but return of our favorite villain. We will see everybody here next week. Same time, same place. Join us for a review of Worst Case Scenario, and we'll have more to announce for a Season 3 Rest in Peace live stream that will come after we finish Scorpion. So if you enjoy those, don't worry. One is definitely coming, and we'll talk to you about it later.